Rain hammered against the metal walls of the shelter. Inside, the human sat alone by the dim glow of a lantern, sharpening his old knife. He thought the storm would drown out every sound, but then he heard it. 3 soft knocks on the door. His body froze. Nobody should be out there. Not in this part of the world. Not tonight. The knocks came again, weak, almost like a child's hand. He rose slowly, knife still in his grip, and walked toward the door. When he pulled it open, the sight made his breath catch. A young alien girl stood there, drenched from the rain, her thin cloak plastered to her trembling body. Her skin glowed faintly blue under the lightning, and her large eyes shimmered with desperation. She swayed unsteadily, her knees almost giving out, and then her lips moved. "If I bond with you, will you let me in?" she whispered. For a moment he couldn't speak. He had heard about her kind, about the way their people viewed bonding. It wasn't just trust, it was life itself. A bond meant 2 souls tied together forever. If he said yes, he would be marked, hunted, maybe killed. The girl's voice cracked as she tried again. "Please, they will find me. I cannot survive alone." Her small hands clutched the doorframe as though she feared he would slam it shut. The human's mind raced. He had kept his distance from aliens since the war. Most of them saw humans as weak intruders, useful only as workers or prey. But now, here was one, shivering, begging, her eyes wide with terror. He asked, low and cautious, "Who is chasing you?" Her head toward the dark storm behind her. Shapes moved between the trees, tall figures with glowing red visors. She flinched at the sight. "Hunters," she breathed. "My own people. They know what I carry. They will kill me unless you take me in." He glanced at the shadows creeping closer, then back at her pale, frightened face. His instincts screamed at him to shut the door, to stay out of this war that wasn't his. But another part of him, the part that still remembered what it meant to be human, couldn't turn her away. Her legs buckled, and she dropped to her knees in the mud. Rain poured over her as she raised her eyes to him. "I beg you, if I bond with you, they cannot take me. They will not be able to break it. You will be my shield." He swallowed hard. The bond was dangerous. He had no idea what it would do to him, what it would mean for his life. But watching her collapse into the storm, he knew he couldn't stand there and do nothing. "Get inside," he said at last. Her eyes widened, glowing with sudden hope. She stumbled forward, and he pulled her through the door, slamming it shut behind her. The pounding rain muffled the sound of voices outside, but he knew the hunters would soon be at his doorstep. The girl collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and she pressed her palm to her heart. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will not forget this." He knelt beside her, still gripping his knife. "What does this bond mean?" he asked. "Tell me the truth." She looked up at him, water dripping from her hair. "It means we are joined. My life is tied to yours. If I die, you will feel it. If you die, I will feel it too. We cannot be broken apart. That is why they fear it. That is why they hunt me." Her words fell heavy in the small shelter. He had only wanted a quiet life, far from war and far from politics. Now, in a single moment, he stood on the edge of something that could change everything. Outside, heavy footsteps splashed in the mud. Voices called in a language he barely understood. The girl's eyes widened again, and she reached for his hand with trembling fingers. "They are here," she whispered. "If you reject me, they will kill me now. If you accept me, we will be one. But you must decide." His heart pounded. The knife felt small and useless in his grip. He looked at her hand, cold and wet against his, and something in him shifted. She wasn't just an alien. She wasn't just a stranger. She was someone who needed him. "Yes," he said, his voice firm. Relief swept over her face. She pressed her forehead to his hand, and in an instant, warmth surged through him. It wasn't like fire, but like a light spreading under his skin, racing through his veins, filling his chest. For a heartbeat, he thought he would collapse. Then it steadied, and he felt her presence inside his mind. Fragile, afraid, but alive. The bond was complete. Outside, the hunters reached the door. Their shadows stretched across the shelter wall, and the sound of claws scraped against the metal. The girl's grip tightened around his hand as her lips trembled. "They will know," she whispered. "They will sense it." He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. For the first time in years, his eyes burned with defiance. If the hunters wanted her, they would have to come through him first. The storm raged louder, drowning out everything but the thudding of his heart. The girl's glowing eyes met his, filled with both fear and trust. The knock on the door shook the walls. He tightened his grip on the knife, the warmth of the bond steady inside him. The battle had only just begun. The storm did not end, but the pounding on the door stopped. The hunters had not left. They were waiting. The human could almost feel their eyes scanning the walls of his shelter. Inside, the girl shivered, her wet cloak clinging to her thin frame. Her breathing was shallow, like she was still running, even though her feet no longer moved. He lit another lantern, pushing back the shadows. "Sit," he told her, pointing to the wooden chair. She obeyed, though her hands shook as she lowered herself down. He crouched in front of her, still gripping the knife. "Tell me everything. I need to know what I just agreed to." Her large eyes lifted to meet his, and her voice quivered. "You accepted my bond. That means our lives are tied together. If I bleed, you will feel pain. If you fall, I will feel it too. No force, no counsel, no law can undo it." She swallowed, her throat dry. "You are my anchor now." He felt the strange warmth in his chest again, pulsing with his heartbeat. It wasn't his alone, it carried her rhythm too. "This is madness," he muttered. "Why would your people kill you for this?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "Because I chose you. Humans are forbidden. My kind believes your blood weakens ours. But I did not care. I saw what humans did in the war. I saw how you fight, how you endure when others fall. I wanted that strength. I wanted you." Her last words hung in the room. The human's jaw tightened. He had lived in silence for years, burying the memories of burning cities and fallen comrades. Now this girl sat before him, saying she admired the very scars he carried. Outside, the hunters called out in their guttural tongue. She flinched and wrapped her arms around herself. "They know I bonded. They will sense it. The link leaves a mark in the air. They will not stop until you are dead and I am dragged back." He moved to the window, peering through a slit in the metal. Red visors glowed faintly between the trees. They were patient. They would wait all night if they had to. When he turned back, she was watching him. "You regret it already," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, but I need to understand what this means for me." She rose slowly, her legs trembling, and stepped closer. Her hand hovered in the air before pressing lightly to his chest. "It means I am inside you now. You will feel me when I am near, even if you close your eyes. You will know when I am afraid. You will know when I am hurt, and I will know the same for you." As her palm rested there, he felt her heartbeat racing like a trapped bird. His own chest answered, quickening in time with hers. His hand lifted, almost against his will, and touched her wrist. The bond surged between them like a quiet current. He pulled back suddenly, breathing hard. "So now I'm cursed with your fear." Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes stayed sad. "Or blessed with my trust." The words silenced him. Trust was not something he had expected to hear again in this world. The girl stepped back, steadying herself. "The hunters will test you. They believe you are nothing, but the bond makes you their enemy. If they catch you, they will not just kill you, they will tear you apart to prove you are unworthy." He leaned against the wall, gripping the knife tighter. "Then we don't let them catch us." She looked at him with surprise, as if she had expected him to throw her out. A soft glow filled her eyes, the bond's light flickering in their depths. "You mean to fight?" He smirked grimly. "I mean to survive." The girl lowered her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No one has ever said that for me before." Thunder cracked above, shaking the walls. The human began checking his supplies, old rifles, a handful of bullets, traps he had built years ago. The girl watched him, silent but trembling. Finally, she asked, "Why did you say yes? You could have shut the door. You could have let me die." He paused, staring down at the knife in his hand. His reflection shone dimly on the blade, "Because I've watched enough people die. I couldn't let it be you, too." Her lips parted, but no words came. She simply stared at him, her bond thread pulling tight between them, carrying her gratitude and fear into his chest. The hunters outside moved closer, their voices sharper now. The human extinguished one lantern, letting darkness hide them. He motioned for her to stay low. She crouched near the wall, her breath shallow. In the silence, he felt her hand brush against his. The bond pulsed warmly, steadying his nerves. He glanced at her. She was afraid, but there was trust in her eyes. He whispered, "If they break in, we fight together." She nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Together. The shelter walls shook as claws scraped against the door. The hunters were no longer waiting. They were coming. The human raised his rifle, heart pounding. The girl pressed closer, clutching the bond with all her will. Lightning split the sky and the shadows outside moved. The night was no longer just his. It was theirs. The first slam rattled the door like thunder. Dust fell from the beams above, and the girl clutched her chest as if each blow landed on her own ribs. The human steadied the rifle against his shoulder, eyes fixed on the metal door that groaned under the hunter's weight. Another strike came, bending the hinges, and he whispered to her, "Stay behind me." She shook her head violently. "If they break in, they will tear you apart first. I cannot." Her words cut off as a sharp crack echoed through the shelter. A claw burst through the metal, curling inward like a hook. The human fired. The rifle's blast thundered through the room, and sparks rained down as the claw jerked back. Outside, a guttural howl rose into the storm. More voices answered, a chorus of rage. The girl's hands trembled as she pressed them over her ears. "They know you draw blood. They will not stop now." The human grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the back of the shelter. Hidden beneath a loose steel plate was a narrow passage dug long ago. He had carved it for escape, not company. Still, he lifted the hatch. "Move." She hesitated. "You will leave everything?" "It's just metal and wood, not worth our lives." Her eyes lingered on him, then she dropped into the tunnel. He followed, sealing the hatch behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole, broken only by the faint glow from her skin. The bond pulsed between them, guiding his steps when the black threatened to blind him. The tunnel was damp, the air tight and heavy. Every scrape of their boots echoed like a scream. The girl whispered, "They will smell us. Then we stay ahead." He led her through the twisting crawl space, past roots that broke through the earth. His memory carried the path, but the ground trembled with the hunter's weight above. Dirt rained down, and the girl stumbled. He caught her before she fell, his arms steady around her shoulders. Her breath hitched as she looked up at him in the dark. "You should not risk this. I am nothing to you." He tightened his hold. "Not anymore." She pressed closer, drawing strength from his words. The bond hummed like a thread of fire between them. A roar shook the earth overhead, and a beam of light speared down through a crack. The hunters were tearing into the ground. The human cursed under his breath and pulled her forward. They moved faster, their footsteps splashing through puddles, the tunnel tightening until they had to crawl. At last, he pushed aside a wooden grate and climbed into the forest. Rain slapped his face, cold and merciless, but the open air was freedom compared to the suffocating earth. He reached down, hauling her up beside him. The forest stretched dark and endless. Lightning lit twisted trees, their branches clawing at the storm. Red lights glowed faintly in the distance, eyes scanning, closing in. She clutched his sleeve. "They are surrounding us." He scanned the terrain, his soldier's mind racing. He had dug more than tunnels. Years of survival had taught him to set traps, snares, pits covered with leaves. He led her quickly toward the ridge where the ground sloped into a ravine. As they ran, the bond tugged at his chest. He felt her exhaustion, the trembling in her legs, the fire in her lungs. It wasn't his pain, but it weighed on him all the same. He slowed just enough to grip her hand. "Hold on." She stumbled, but he pulled her forward, refusing to let her collapse. Behind them, the forest lit with red beams as the hunters spread out. One called in their harsh tongue, and then the chase began. The human dragged the girl toward a narrow clearing, his eyes darting to the shadows. "Stay close. Do not step aside." A heavy thud shook the ground behind them as the first hunter broke into the clearing. Towering, armored, its visor burned red. It raised a spear that hummed with energy. The girl gasped, fear flashing down the bond, flooding his chest. But the human kept steady, pulling her past the first line of trees. The hunter charged straight into the hidden pit. The ground caved, snapping branches, and the alien roared as it fell into the spike-lined hole. The girl stumbled back in shock, staring at the pit. The human didn't slow. "There are more." Another burst from the side, swinging a blade. The human shoved her down and fired. The bullet sparked against armor, but the impact staggered the creature. With a grunt, he kicked it into another trap, where a snare of wire tightened around its limbs and dragged it upward into the trees. Her wide eyes fixed on him. "You planned this." "I survive," he answered. More red lights blinked through the rain and closing in from every side. The hunters roared their fury, and the forest shook with their steps. The girl pressed her palm to her chest, whispering, "They will not stop until you fall. You feel it too, don't you? Their hunger?" He nodded, eyes locked on the storm ahead. "Let them come. As long as you can run, I'll hold them." Tears slid down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. "I cannot lose you. If you fall, I—" Her voice cracked as the bond surged, her fear tangling with his resolve. He turned, gripping her shoulders. "Then don't let me fall." The forest erupted as the hunters charged. The human raised his rifle, his traps waiting in the dark, and the girl clung to him, her bond burning like fire between their hearts. The night had become war. The rain had turned the forest floor into mud, thick and heavy under every step. The human pulled the girl behind him, his rifle gripped tight, eyes scanning for danger. The bond burned steady in his chest, telling him her fear was rising with each echo of the hunter's roars. Lightning cracked across the sky, and for a moment the trees lit up with shadows. 3 hunters moved along the ridge, their red visors glowing like fire in the storm. The human tugged her down behind a fallen log. They crouched low, water soaking into their clothes, breaths held as the hunters passed above. The girl pressed close, whispering, "They smell us. They will find us soon." He whispered back, calm but firm, "Then we stay ahead. Quiet now." They moved again, crawling through roots and brush until the ground opened into a narrow gully. He remembered this path. He had dug small roots years ago, escapes from raiders and beasts. Now those same tunnels could save them. He found the entrance hidden under thick vines. With one swift motion, he pulled them aside and guided her down into the dark passage. She gasped as the earth closed around them again, the ceiling so low they had to bend. The sound of the storm faded above, but new sounds replaced it. Dripping water, the scurry of unseen creatures, and the faint tremble of the earth as the hunters searched. The girl's hand brushed against his, clinging tightly. "How long can we hide?" "Long enough to reach the end," he answered. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting the bond's light. "You should have left me. They would not have hunted you if not for me." He shook his head. "That choice was made the moment you knocked on my door." She lowered her gaze, ashamed. "And now your blood will be on my hands." He stopped, forcing her to face him. "No. If blood is spilled, it will be mine by my own will, not yours. Understand?" Her lips trembled, but she nodded. The bond pulsed warmly, carrying her sorrow and her gratitude into his chest. They pressed forward, mud squelching underfoot. The tunnel twisted downward until it opened into a wide cavern. Water dripped from the ceiling, pooling in shallow streams that shimmered faintly with bioluminescent fungi. The girl gasped softly at the sight, her fear easing for just a heartbeat. But the moment passed quickly. From above, a deafening crash shook the earth. A shaft of red light pierced through the ceiling, soil collapsing as claws ripped through stone. "They've tracked us," she cried. The human pushed her behind a boulder as a hunter dropped into the cavern, towering, armored, its red visor sweeping the shadows. Another followed, landing hard enough to crack the stone beneath. The human steadied his rifle, heart hammering. The bond surged with her terror, but he focused, keeping his hands steady. One shot rang out, striking the first hunter in the visor. Sparks flew, and it staggered back with a metallic roar. The second charged, blade flashing. The girl screamed, and he rolled aside just as the weapon smashed into the boulder, splitting it in two. He fired again, the bullet biting into the alien's shoulder, but it only enraged the creature. The bond flared hot. He felt her pain, though she wasn't touched, her fear pouring into him. It sharpened his senses. He ducked the blade and swung his knife upward, slashing at a gap in the alien's armor. Black blood sprayed across the cavern floor. The girl pressed her palms together, whispering words in her own tongue. A faint glow sparked from her hands, the bond feeding it, wrapping around him like a thin shield. He felt it settle on his skin, light yet steady. The wounded hunter roared, swinging again. The human braced himself, and the blade struck, but instead of slicing through flesh, it glanced off the glowing barrier. The impact knocked him backward, but he rose quickly, eyes fierce. He lunged forward, driving his knife into the alien's throat. The roar cut short, and the creature collapsed, its massive body shaking the cavern. The girl gasped, the bond flooding with shock and relief. The first hunter, visor cracked from the rifle shot, advanced again. The human raised his weapon, but the gun clicked empty. No more bullets. The alien raised its spear to strike. The girl darted forward, crying out in defiance. The bond between them flared like fire, and the alien froze, its body shuddering. The human didn't hesitate. He snatched the spear from its grip and drove it deep into the alien's chest. Silence fell in the cavern, broken only by the drip of water. The hunters lay still, their bodies dark against the glowing fungi. The girl collapsed to her knees, her face pale. They will send more. Always more. You cannot fight them all. He wiped the blood from his knife, breathing hard. Then we keep moving until we find a way they can't follow. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. Why do you risk so much? You could have stayed hidden forever. Safe. He crouched beside her, gripping her shoulder. Because you knocked on my door, and I said yes. Her lips trembled, and for the first time she smiled faintly through her tears. Above them, the sound of claws scraped along the earth again. The hunters were not finished. The human helped her to her feet, the bond burning strong inside them both. Together they vanished deeper into the dark. The cavern narrowed until the walls pressed close on either side, rough stones scraping their shoulders as they passed. The human kept one hand on the girl's back, guiding her forward while the other gripped the stolen alien spear. Every step echoed through the dark, and every echo felt like a signal to the hunters above. The girl's breath came in shaky bursts. The bond carried her fear into him like a steady pulse, but he used it to sharpen his senses. Keep moving, he whispered. Don't stop. At last, the tunnel split into two paths. The left sloped downward where water trickled into unseen depths. The right climbed upward toward faint, cold air. He hesitated only a moment before choosing the right. Upward meant escape. They climbed, boots slipping in the mud. The girl stumbled, but he caught her arm and pulled her back to her feet. She looked up at him, her lips trembling. I slow you down. You're alive. That's all that matters. Before she could reply, a roar echoed from behind. Red light flickered against the stone as hunters forced their way into the cavern. Their voices rose in a war cry, the sound bouncing off the walls until it felt like the earth itself was howling. The girl gripped his hand tight, her nails digging into his skin. They are close. He didn't answer. He pushed her ahead, urging her faster. The path ended suddenly at a jagged wall. Above, moonlight shone faintly through a crack in the stone. Freedom was just beyond reach. He shoved his knife into a crevice and tested it for grip. Climb. Now. Her eyes widened. I cannot. Yes, you can. His voice left no room for doubt. I'll be right behind you. Shaking, she obeyed. Her small hands scrambled at the rock, finding holds where none seemed to exist. The bond throbbed with her fear, but also with the courage she borrowed from him. Slowly, she pulled herself upward, the moonlight painting her silver against the stone. The human followed close, pushing her when she faltered. The spear clattered against the rock, nearly slipping, but he caught it before it fell. Below, the hunters surged into the passage, their visors glowing red. One raised a weapon, firing a bolt of searing light that blasted stone near the girl's leg. She screamed, nearly losing her grip. The human lunged upward, wrapping an arm around her waist. Hold on! Her body shook violently, but she clung tighter, and together they scrambled higher. The hunter's roars filled the passage as more energy bolts blasted into the rock, spraying shards into the air. Dust stung his eyes, but he kept climbing. At last, her fingers broke through the crack into open air. She dragged herself up, pulling with every ounce of strength. Then she turned, reaching down for him. Take my hand. He grabbed it, their bond surging with fire, and she helped haul him through the gap. They tumbled onto wet grass, the cold night wind whipping their faces. The storm had faded, leaving the world eerily quiet beneath the pale moon. But there was no time to rest. The hunter's claws scraped against stone below, trying to widen the gap. The human pulled her to her feet. We move. She nodded, tears streaking her face, but determination glowed in her eyes. They ran across the open plain, the ground slick with rain. The moon cast long shadows, and in the distance, the lights of a ruined city flickered faintly. The human angled toward it, knowing crumbling walls and broken towers could hide them better than the open field. The girl's voice was faint as they ran. That city, it was once mine. He glanced at her. Yours? My people built it, then abandoned it. They said it was cursed by weakness. But I remember the halls. Her voice cracked. I was a child then. The bond trembled with her sorrow, and he felt it like his own. But he tightened his grip on her hand. Then we take back its strength tonight. The hunters poured out of the cavern behind them, their glowing visors lighting the plain. They spread out quickly, their roars shaking the air. The girl stumbled again, exhaustion dragging her down. He scooped her into his arms, carrying her against his chest as he ran. She gasped in shock, her arms tightening around his neck. You will fall." "I won't," he grunted. His legs burned, lungs searing, but he didn't slow. The city rose higher ahead, black towers broken against the sky. The first collapsed gate loomed before them. He dashed through it, ducking under fallen stone, weaving through shadows. The hunters followed, their heavy steps echoing against ruined walls. At last, he stopped in a courtyard where broken statues lay scattered. He lowered the girl gently to the ground, his chest heaving. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes wide with fear and awe. "You carried me." He crouched beside her, spear ready, eyes on the shadows. "I told you, I won't let you fall." The bond pulsed warm between them, stronger now than ever. She pressed her hand to her heart, tears glistening in the moonlight. "Then I will not let you stand alone." From every side, red lights pierced the ruins. The hunters had found them. The city was no sanctuary. It was the battlefield. The human rose slowly, spear in hand, as the girl pulled herself to her feet beside him. Together they faced the darkness, the bond burning bright enough to challenge the night. The ruins echoed with the sound of metal boots striking stone. The hunters moved through the broken city like shadows, their red visors glowing in the dark. The human stood tall in the courtyard, the spear balanced in his hands, the girl trembling beside him. The bond between them burned hotter than ever, carrying her fear straight into his chest, but also her trust. The girl whispered, "They will surround us. They never fight one against one." He kept his eyes forward, scanning every archway and shattered pillar. "Then we break their circle." Lightning flashed far above, casting jagged light through the broken towers. In that moment, he saw them, half a dozen hunters creeping closer from all sides, blades drawn, weapons humming with energy. They moved slowly, confident, certain their prey had nowhere left to run. The girl clutched his sleeve. "Please, don't fight them all. You can't." He looked down at her, eyes steady. "I can fight enough." The first hunter lunged from the shadows, its blade arcing down. The human spun, spear flashing, and deflected the strike with a sharp clang. He countered fast, ramming the spear into the alien's chest, forcing it back into a crumbled wall. Stone cracked as the creature roared and collapsed. The others charged. The girl screamed his name, but the human didn't hesitate. He moved like a man who had lived through wars, who had nothing left to lose but his promise. His knife slashed when the spear missed, and when weapons clashed, he used the ruins themselves, kicking loose stones, knocking over broken statues, striking with whatever lay at hand. Still, there were too many. Two hunters pinned him between them, their blades cutting the air faster than his eyes could follow. The girl's chest ached with his pain through the bond, every close strike tearing at her as though it were her flesh. She couldn't just stand by. Her trembling hands rose, glowing faintly with the energy of the bond. She whispered words in her own tongue, the bond threads wrapping tighter around them both. A sudden flash of light burst from her palms, blinding one of the hunters long enough for the human to drive his spear through its visor. The girl staggered, drained, but he caught her arm and pulled her back to her feet. "Stay with me." "I am," she whispered, her eyes wet but fierce. Another hunter leapt from the archway above. The human shoved the girl aside and rolled as the blade crashed into the ground where he had stood. Dust and rubble exploded upward. He sprang to his feet, swinging the butt of the spear against the alien's head. The strike rang like a bell, staggering the massive figure, but it swung wildly, the blade slicing across his arm. Pain shot through him, and she cried out at the same time, clutching her shoulder, though no blade had touched her. The bond made her share his wound. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the hot stream of blood. "You feel it too?" She nodded, pale but steady. "We are one now. If you bleed, I bleed." That knowledge made his movements sharper, more desperate. He could not fall, not only for himself, but because she would fall with him. He pushed forward, slamming the spear deep into the alien's gut. It roared once and toppled, the courtyard shaking with its fall. More came, crawling over walls, breaking through fallen doors. Their voices rang in cruel laughter. The girl's knees buckled, and she whispered, "They want to break you. If you die, the bond breaks, and they will take me." The human's eyes narrowed. "Then I don't die." He pulled her behind the shattered statue of a forgotten king. The hunters spread out, searching. He wiped blood from his arm, ignoring the throbbing pain. His mind raced. Every ruin held secrets, every wall could be a weapon. He spotted it, a collapsed tower above, its foundation cracked and unstable. If it fell at the right moment, it could crush half their pursuers. He touched the girl's shoulder. "Trust me." She nodded, though her lips trembled. Always. When the hunters advanced again, he baited them into the open courtyard, dodging their blades, retreating step by step toward the tower. Their laughter grew louder, their pace faster, until they stood beneath the weakened stones. The girl's bond burned against his chest, urging him on. He planted the spear in a gap of the crumbling wall and pushed with all his strength. The old stones groaned, shifted, then collapsed. The tower came down with a thunderous roar. Dust and stone swallowed the courtyard, burying hunters under tons of rubble. The ground shook so hard it nearly threw them both off their feet. When the dust cleared, silence fell. The ruins glowed faintly with moonlight, and only broken claws stuck out from the rubble. The girl stared in shock, then turned to him, her eyes wide with awe. "You brought down a tower." He leaned heavily on the spear, his breath ragged, his arm bleeding freely. "No, we did." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she pressed her forehead to his chest, clutching his tunic as tears spilled. "They will send more," she whispered. "But for the first time, I believe we can stand." He rested a hand gently on her head, the bond between them pulsing steady, no longer just fear, but strength shared. His voice was low, certain. "As long as we stand together." From the far side of the ruins, a horn echoed, a deep, terrible sound. More hunters were coming, and louder than before. But the girl did not tremble this time. She lifted her chin, glowing eyes fierce. The bond had changed them both, and the war was only beginning. The horn's echo faded into the night, but the ruins did not rest. The air itself seemed to shake as more hunters marched closer. Their voices rose in deep chants, a rhythm of war, and the ground vibrated beneath their heavy steps. The humans stood in the broken courtyard, leaning on the alien spear, while the girl clung to his side, her glowing eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "They are calling the council," she whispered. "This is no longer just a hunt. They will judge us before their leaders." He frowned. "Judge us?" "Yes." Her voice trembled. "They will drag us to the high chambers. They will not kill you at once. They will make you fight for me, fight for the right to keep the bond. If you fall, they will tear me away and end your life slowly." The human's grip tightened on the spear. "Then I don't fall." Before she could answer, red lights lit the streets of the ruined city. Dozens of hunters marched in formation, their armor shining wet from the storm, their weapons humming. They surrounded the courtyard like a cage of fire. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, its armor carved with symbols of command. Its voice was deep and sharp. "Human, you have broken our law. You have taken what is forbidden. You will come before the council and prove your worth, or die tonight." The girl's knees weakened. She clutched the human's arm. "Please, do not resist. If you refuse, they will kill you now. But if you face the trial, you have a chance." The human's eyes narrowed, but he nodded once. "Fine. Take me to your council." The hunters bound his hands with glowing chains, though he did not resist. They dragged both him and the girl through the ruined streets until they reached a vast hall half buried in stone. Inside, fire pits blazed high, casting light on the carved faces of alien leaders sitting on stone thrones. The council chamber smelled of smoke and blood. The leaders' eyes burned as they looked down at the human. One of them sneered, "This is the one? Small, fragile, weak," another hissed. "And yet the bond holds. She tied herself to this creature." The girl stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. "I chose him. I begged him. If I die, it will be by my will, not yours." The chamber erupted in growls and laughter. The leader raised a hand for silence. His gaze pierced the human. "By our law, the bond must be tested. If you survive the trial of combat, you may keep her. If you fall, your blood will mark the ground and she will be cleansed." The human lifted his chin. "Then bring me your best." The chains were cut from his wrists. He was pushed into the center of the hall, where a circle of hunters surrounded him. From the far side, a massive figure stepped forward, an alien champion. Its armor was thick, its claws like blades, and its eyes glowed brighter than fire. It raised a heavy war axe, slamming it against the stone with a boom that shook the hall. The girl gasped, clutching the bond thread at her chest. She whispered, "No human has ever faced a champion and lived." He glanced at her, his voice calm. "Then I'll be the first." The fight began. The champion swung its axe in a wide arc, the air itself splitting with the force. The human ducked low, rolling across the ground. He grabbed the fallen spear and thrust upwards, striking at the gaps in armor. Sparks flew, but the champion hardly flinched. The bond burned hot, her fear pounding in his chest. He steadied himself, pushing her terror back with his own resolve. "Trust me," he whispered under his breath, though she could not hear his words, only feel his heart. The champion charged. The human dodged again, his movements sharp, using speed against size. Each strike of the axe shattered stone, sending shards flying. The crowd roared, mocking, laughing at the tiny figure defying their strongest warrior. Then the human changed his pace. Instead of retreating, he darted forward. The champion swung down, and the human slid under the blow, stabbing his knife into the alien's leg joint. Black blood splattered the floor. The champion roared, staggering. The hall fell silent for a heartbeat. No human had ever drawn blood from a champion. The girl's eyes widened, tears streaming down her face as the bond surged with wild hope. "You can do this," she whispered. The champion bellowed and swung again, but the human was already moving. He leapt onto broken stone, climbed higher, and when the axe struck again, he used the opening to hurl himself onto the alien's back. His knife plunged deep into the gap at the neck. The champion thrashed, slamming into walls, trying to shake him off, but he held firm, driving the blade deeper until the alien finally collapsed with a roar that shook the chamber. The champion lay still. Silence ruled the hall. The human stood over the body, blood staining his clothes, chest heaving. He raised his head to face the council. "The bond stands. She stays with me." The leaders glared, their pride shattered. At last, the one in command rose slowly. "So be it. By our law, victory is his. The bond cannot be broken. She is his." The girl rushed forward, tears falling freely, and threw herself into his arms. The bond glowed bright, stronger than ever, filling them both with warmth. "You said yes," she whispered, her voice breaking, "and you never let go." He held her close, his eyes on the furious faces of the council. "I said yes, and I'll keep saying it, no matter how many of you come." The fire pits crackled, casting their shadows tall against the stone. The hunters bowed their heads, silent, for they could not deny the law. The girl lifted her face, glowing eyes meeting his. "We walk out of here together." And together they did, hand in hand, the bond blazing like a flame that no storm could ever put out.